Welcome into the LSU Sports Insider Podcast. Today's Thursday, November 21st. I'm Zach Ewing with Koki Riley and Reed Darcey. This is our LSU Vandy football preview episode. And yeah, the season marches on, even if a lot of fans may not want it to march on at this point. But LSU does have 2 games left on the schedule. They have 2 home games left on the schedule, and it starts Saturday against Vandy. And for as much as people are like, I don't care, this doesn't matter. I mean, we'll talk about this more. It gets a lot uglier, I feel like, if you lose one or both of these home games to end the year, Koki.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Will Campbell talked about this exact thing yesterday in a very, passionate media availability that he had with us yesterday. And he said that almost word for word, like 8-4 is a lot better than 6-6. Like, granted, not winning a championship at LSU is a failure. And again, I'm paraphrasing what he said. But 8-4 is a lot better than 6-6, and they still have a lot to play for. So, I mean, I agree with every single word that Will said, and that's kind of where this team is at the moment.
You can always count on Will Campbell to sort of deliver a good inspirational message, I feel like. So there's a big difference, like Koki said, between 8-4 and 6-6, particularly if you look at the long game and how this season is going to be judged 5-10 years from now, and how Brian Kelly is going to be judged further down the line. You know, you could look at, the losses of Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, and say, okay, they took a slight step back from 10 wins to 8 wins. But 10 wins to 6 wins or 7 wins is a pretty significant drop-off. And so that's what LSU is trying to avoid the last couple weeks of this season.
Yeah, in 2 years when we're looking at LSU, when we're on footballreference.com, we're looking at LSU's historical outputs in terms of when you're just seeing records and you don't really have the context behind those records. If you just see 9-4 and say they win that bowl game and just see 10-3, 10-3, 9-4, you're like, okay, they took like a half step back in that third season. It wasn't a disaster. But if you see like 6-6 or 7-6 or heck 6-7, that's when you're like, oh no, what happened that year? And that's what they're kind of trying to avoid right now, even though it's a very odd thing to say. But things get forgotten and lost in translation as time goes on, and you don't want the season to be remembered as the major step back for Brian Kelly. You just want to see it as, maybe a half step back.
Yeah, I think you're right. I was going to say media guide instead of footballreference.com, but that's because I'm old. You guys are much more, like, you're right. Nobody looks at the media. They don't even print those damn things anymore, do they? Like, you got to look online for them, I think.
I think they still do print them, actually.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do.
Okay.
But
Brad will give them to us before the game starts.
And Sheldon loved thumbing through those.
Oh, I love
That's
media
true.
guides, man.
Yeah.
I've got like LSU 1997 media guide at my desk out there. It's kind of cool to flip back and look at how they used to do things. But I totally agree with you guys. If you're 8-4, that's a minor step back. If you're 6-6, particularly if you lost 5 in a row to end the season 6-6, that's a red flag. That means Brian Kelly is very uncomfortable going into next year. Like, he's not getting fired. He's got a $60 million buyout. I don't care if they lose by 30 points to Vandy. Like, somebody's got to come up with that money. And if they do, like, if I'm a donor who goes to Scott Woodward and says, look, I got $60 million for the buyout. If I'm Scott, I'm saying, could you please put that in the NIL fund and we'll just keep BK for another year? Like, that's the way I'm looking at this. So you 8-4 though is all right. You're disappointed. It's a minor step back. But ultimately those happen. You're never going to be, well, I shouldn't say that because Georgia and Alabama have seemed to have figured it out, but it is very difficult to win 10, 11 games every single year.
Yeah. And I think, LSU has not lost 4 straight games since 1999. That was before Nick Saban took over. Nick Saban never did it. Les Miles never did it. Ed Orgeron never did it. Les Miles and Ed Orgeron had 3-game losing streaks, but they always won that 4th game, right? And so I don't think Brian Kelly is going to wants to be judged as the only coach this century who's led LSU on a 4-game losing streak. So that's what's on the line against Vanderbilt. Like, you can say the season's over, and you can say that LSU doesn't have anything to play for. They're going to go to a pretty low-level bowl game. But, you don't want to lose 4 straight. You don't want to lose 5 of 6 or whatever it is, particularly where this team was about a month ago. And look at where they are now. They're trying to avoid doing something that hasn't happened this century.
And I don't think LSU thinks of itself, and its fans certainly don't think of their program as should never lose at home to Vanderbilt. And I know Vanderbilt's got a nice team. We're going to talk about that. We're going to break it down. But that should not be a game LSU loses in Tiger Stadium. I don't care the circumstances.
At night.
at night. So we're going to break it down on this episode. First, want to let you know that the LSU Sports Insider is brought to you by Waste Pro. Tiger fans, if you're planning a tailgate or event, keep your guests comfortable with portable toilets from Waste Pro. Call 225-744-6400 and mention the LSU Sports Insider for a special offer. Let's take our first break, and we'll be back beginning our LSU Vandy breakdown right after this.
Experience the convenience and cleanliness that Waste Pro brings to Mardi Gras, LSU tailgates, and festivals with our top-notch portable toilet services. Perfect for large crowds and community events. Join the countless satisfied families and organizers who trust Waste Pro to keep their gatherings spotless and sanitary. Discover more about our services and make your next event a success at wasteprousa.com.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. Parlay Builder gives you all the game day action from all across the league. Multiple games, legs, and props, all in one spot. It's so quick and easy, you can keep your focus on the games and your nachos. Or if you're focusing on one game, remember, you can place your same game parlays live during the action. Caesars Sportsbook, the only sportsbook app with Caesars rewards.
You know how far I've gone, now I'm home again. I'm feeling more alive these days than I've ever been.
At the Baton Rouge Clinic, our sole focus is to provide exceptional health care for your entire family so that you can get back to doing what you love most. We are caring for generations.
You gave me love, gave me love.
Okay, welcome back. We're watching the LSU Sports Insider, our LSU Vandy preview. Leave your comments below on your thoughts on this game. Also, you can check out other videos on the LSU Sports at NOLA.com YouTube channel. Subscribe to that channel. Hit the like button while you're down there and all of that good stuff. Guys, we kind of mentioned the stakes for this one and what's left to play for. You know, and all those things are right. Like, you want to be 8-4. You don't want to lose 4 in a row. You don't want to lose to Vanderbilt, all those things. I also just think for some individual players on this team, you just want to play better. You want to put some better game tape out there, whether it be for an NFL draft or for a guy coming back, maybe depending on a decision like a Garrett Nussmeier. Like, you want to see him play better. I don't know. Like I just feel like you're talking about 18 to 20-year-old kids, 18 to 22-year-old kids. They get out there on the football field. They're going to play hard. They don't want to lose. They're not thinking necessarily when it's 2nd and 7 in the second quarter about whether they're going to make the college football playoff. They want to go win.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those younger guys who maybe have played a little bit but not a ton, like, can you earn your stripes for next season, and where you can play a lot more and be kind of an integral part of this team? And you know, like, I think that's important, especially when, you know, they're going to have a new tight end. They're going to have a couple new wide receivers. They're going to have 4 new starters in the offensive line potentially. They're probably going to have at least a couple new safeties. Like, I'm just kind of going through the position groups of like how many open spots are going to be next year, are going to like sort of open up next year. And not all those spots necessarily have to be portal spots, you know, for LSU. And granted, LSU may, and for some of these guys, maybe they've already made the decision and they're going to enter the transfer portal and they want to put some good tape on to, you know, try to land at a different spot. So like, there's a bunch of different, I guess, motivating factors heading to this game for a lot of different guys, especially these younger guys who can play next season.
And I'm curious to see which younger guys get more playing time than they would have if LSU were still in playoff contention. I know we saw a good bit of Devon Keys, the freshman linebacker, last week against Florida. He had a decent game. I'm wondering if we see more, you know, Deshaun Spears, more PJ Woodland in the secondary. I wonder if we see maybe some offensive linemen. If Garrett Dellinger doesn't play, maybe rotate a couple offensive linemen into that left guard spot. You know, just give guys an opportunity to show what they can do, show what they have, so you have a better idea of what you have going into spring ball and a better idea of what you need from the transfer portal in the offseason. So I'll be curious to see if some young guys get some more looks this game against Vanderbilt.
I mean, if they want to stretch the field, maybe throw the ball to Shelton Sampson a couple of times, maybe play Jelani Watkins, like
right, yeah.
Just some other options, right? And they have quite a few freshmen on that offensive line, true freshmen that really haven't seen the field at all. Like, there's just a bunch of different, I guess, directions you can go to heading in this game.
I'm actually kind of fascinated by this game because it's LSU's got to find motivation somewhere. You only get 12 of these games a year, guaranteed. You might get more, but these are 2 of them right here. This is a 6th of your whole season you practice the whole year for. If they can't get motivated for this game because the CFP, the SEC title races are out of the picture, then I think you may have a real problem. That's a bad sign of culture in a program if you can't get your team playing hard. And I'm not just talking about Brian Kelly here, but just the players too. You've got to have that buy-in from top down. And so I'm curious to see how that plays out.
I'd like to see I'd like to hear what you guys think about this, but I think this team has actually played hard throughout the season. I don't think that's necessarily been an issue. It's just a matter of like playing disciplined football and looking like a well-coached team. Those are 2 different things. It seems like these players are bought into what they should be doing, but the problem is just a matter of doing the right thing from a mental perspective, like a down-to-down perspective on every single play. Like that's kind of been the issue. It's a reoccurring problems. On that
I think I agree with you there. I mean, the tackling's been a little bit better. I don't have the exact numbers on me, but I think the tackling's been a little bit better than it was last year. And I think, talking to guys like Whit Weeks and Will Campbell, I think, you can still see that they have some kind of edge and that they want to win these games and they want to be more competitive in these games. I think if you look like defensively, their inability to stop rushing quarterbacks, I don't think that has anything to do with effort. I think it's more so scheme and communication and having the right call in place and having guys be in the right gaps and having guys do their jobs.
And everyone knowing what the call is.
Right, and everyone
like
knowing what they're supposed to be doing. I think that's been more of an issue than any kind of effort or focus. I think it's sort of sometimes, and we'll get into this later, Zach, I think it's more so just having the right calls in place and having everybody on the same page to try to defend what they need to defend.
And I should note that Will Campbell, when he talked yesterday, said this has nothing to do with the coaching or the scheme. It has everything to do with the players, and you have to respect a guy for Will Campbell to say that out loud and to really speak his mind. But I agree with you and not him in the sense that, to me, the failures of this season have mostly been on have been, a lot of it's just been an indictment of coaching, I think, and just the inability for this team to just play disciplined football on a down-to-down basis.
But I agree with you guys. The effort has been there, and that is a positive sign for the coaches, because that means your kids are still playing hard for you. I mean, I do think that, and so if that continues, LSU's going to have a chance, and like we said, they should want to win these games. Heck, you only play 12 a year. Go win as many as you can. You mentioned Garrett Dellinger. That brings us to today's injury report. It's brought to you by the Baton Rouge Clinic. Some good news, Koki, on Garrett Dellinger. He is going to practice today, and maybe doing more as the week goes on, and a possibility to play on Saturday.
He practiced yesterday in, I guess, these pass protection sort of drills, and they're going to try to get him some work in the running game. That's what Brian Kelly said this morning on his Wednesday teleconference, and so they're fairly optimistic with what they're seeing, but they want to see more as the week progresses as to whether he can actually play this weekend. Either way, I think Tyree Adams is going to be more available this week than he was last week. Last week, he kind of came in on kind of an emergency duty when Miles Frazier was out for a few plays. I think this week, I think he could have a much bigger workload and potentially come in at left guard if they need him there.
Kudos to Garrett Dellinger if he does suit up. I mean, he can't be 100%. The guy had tightrope surgery for a high ankle sprain just a few weeks ago. And these games don't matter. So kudos for him for suiting up. But I do think if you're Dellinger, if you're the people around him, if you're LSU and the coaching staff, you have to weigh, the benefits of him coming back for these 2-3 games versus him, starting to get ready for the NFL draft and trying to make sure that he doesn't miss any time of that preparation. Because I think y'all mentioned this on the last pod. I think he will get drafted at some point. He might not be a first or second round pick, but he'll probably be on an NFL roster next year, and so you have to think about your long-term health. So I'm sure that's in consideration when you sort of factor in, whether he's going to come back or not.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope there's no real risk of re-injury. If that's the case, then you don't put him out there. But he should be back. And Wilson also had a good breakdown. Go back and watch Monday's episode on how this offensive line is missing Dellinger and how it's kind of affected all the moving pieces. So other note, Deshaun Womack wasn't injured. He was suspended, I guess, didn't travel with the team on for the Florida game. He is going to be available this weekend, the defensive end, so he's back.
Yeah, he wasn't officially suspended or anything. We got no indication on why exactly he didn't play, but he's available this weekend, and he didn't travel with the team last weekend, so
maybe you just missed the flight.
Yeah, just take. Maybe
it happens,
I don't know.
man.
It happens, just take that as you will, I guess.
All right, so he will be around. Today's show is brought to you by the Baton Rouge Clinic, your trusted healthcare provider in the heart of Baton Rouge. Whether you're in need of primary care, specialist services, or urgent care, the Baton Rouge Clinic has you covered with a team of dedicated and experienced professionals. Visit BatonRougeClinic.com to learn more or to schedule your appointment today. The Baton Rouge Clinic, caring for generations. Okay, moving into our breakdown, guys, we'll start as we always do when LSU has the ball. And I wanted to zone in a little bit on Nussmeier. He's had a rough month here now, really. And you go back to the Ole Miss game, and he made some big plays at the end of that game. He also made some head-scratching decisions in that game. Same thing with South Alabama, made some big plays. He was kind of what we thought he was going to be, the gunslinger, where he's going to force some balls into windows. He's going to make some big plays. He's also going to set you back with some mistakes. Unfortunately for Garrett and for the Tigers, like the last 2.5 games, it's been kind of all of the bad and not much of the good.
I think the main thing that I wanted to highlight was his ball security, because at times when he gets flushed out of the pocket, when he gets pressure, the ball gets loose, right, Koki? Like
a lot of quarterbacks are like that.
Yeah, you sort of see him take 2 hands off the ball, keep 1 hand off the ball, and he fumbled twice against Florida. One of them LSU recovered, one of them LSU didn't. They lost. So I want to see Garrett get more fundamentally sound with his ball security. Not in terms of throwing interceptions, but in terms of preventing fumbles, because you want to see quarterbacks when they get flushed out of the pocket, and you want to see them keep their eyes downfield, which I think he's done a good job of, but you also want to see them keep 2 hands on the ball so defenders can't jar it loose and force a fumble. I think that's a quick, easy fix. So in terms of him being, making better decisions and putting the ball in harm's way less often, I think that's one quick and easy way that he can sort of fix those mistakes and sort of clean that up and give LSU's offense a better chance of sustaining drives.
I thought he was okay in the Florida game. Made some of the easier throws, but the problem with that game and really a lot of the games this season is that they're not really hitting the deep ball, and because they're not really hitting the deep ball, it's making everything on the interior, even though it's intermediate throw, is very tight. And I think LSU's offense felt really, really tight, especially in the passing game against this past week against Florida, even though they were able to complete a lot of those short passes. Like, they kind of got their short game going, like their quick game going, which is something that I've been calling for. But it wasn't enough for them to actually turn that into points, because they had to go to the quick game too often. When you're going to the quick game too often, like, it makes it you're making life very, very difficult for yourself, because you're having to just be so consistent on so many plays, right?
That's how you wind up with 25 third downs.
Yeah, exactly. And you just can't put yourself in that position too often. You gotta hit a deep one and avoid those third downs, like, sometimes. And that's what this offense is missing at the moment. And they need Chris Hilton desperately to really break one and to catch one of these deep balls. That's something that I'm gonna definitely keep an eye out for, and I think is a big key to this game.
He needs to stop jumping. He needs to stop jumping, says Brian Kelly.
You can tell with Chris, his timing has been off, which is to be expected after he missed so much time. You can tell he and Nuss are just a little bit out of sync, and his ability to catch the ball is just thrown off a little bit, just because he's missed so much time.
Yeah.
So a lot was made of that clip of BK yelling at him. Lip readers did their thing.
John Boy's breakdown, classic as always.
Yeah, so a lot was made of that, but you want to see him, I guess, just make a few catches, find a rhythm, and get more comfortable, more in sync with Garrett Nussmeier, because because these last 2 games they're going to need that vertical threat to really take advantage of what this offense can fully become.
Now, I don't want to sound too much like an LSU fanboy when I say this, but I just don't really understand why we're going to the Zapruder film every single time someone yells or screams at or around Brian Kelly. Mm-hmm. during these LSU games. Like, Travis Kelce literally screamed at Andy Reid and pushed him in the middle of the Super Bowl, and they won the Super Bowl. It was fine.
They won. That's the difference, right?
I know
there.
that's
Yeah.
the difference, that they won, but like, my point is, it happens when teams win. It happens when teams lose. It's just a part of football, and it's something that just happens in the sideline. Football is a very emotional and physical sport. So like, I don't know. I don't think like the reason why they're losing or the reason why they're struggling is because stuff like that is happening. You know, it just shows you that they care. Like, that's really all it means.
I agree with you on that. I think Brian Kelly, honestly, this may be a factor. He's kind of easy to lip read. Just the way he talks, he's kind of easy to tell what he's saying, and so that makes it easier for all of these, internet sleuths to do their work and that sort of thing. So,
and of course, when you're losing, everything gets under the microscope.
That's right.
Even those kinds of things. So, have you ever seen Nick Saban yell at a player? I think he's yelled at a few players every now and then, right? So he's it just goes to show.
And people have kind of decided that they just don't really like Brian Kelly, though. Like, Brian Kelly's had a lot of success. He's made the national championship game. He had 10-win seasons every year since I think 2016 was the last time they didn't have a 10-win season. So like, he's had a lot of success, but people have kind of just decided that, all right, the moment when we can jump on this guy, we're going to jump on him, and I feel like that's just more of a national thing than a local thing, obviously. And like, it's not our job to necessarily like psychoanalyze how the national media treats Brian Kelly. Or the internet treats Brian Kelly, but it is. I think it's definitely a factor when we sort of talk about, how people are reacting to who's yelling at who in these sideline shots during these LSU games.
To wrap things up on the offense, we talked about this a lot on Tuesday. Or Monday. That was really what Monday's podcast was about. So check that out too if you want a deeper dive. There's a couple of things, and one is, I mentioned this on Monday. Bill Connolly of ESPN, who does a great job with some of his stats and analytics, had LSU, I think, is 123rd in the country over the last 4 weeks, so 3 games for them, in the percentage of plays that gained either 0 yards or lost yardage. They had 39% of their plays are either 0 yards, so incomplete passes, or you lost yardage. That's way too high, because when you're talking about the short game, you at least better be getting 4 or 5 yards every time, or that's not going to work. You're going to get into these third downs. And then the other one, and it's a little bit related, but you talk about the big plays. And I think, guys, if you're out there big play hunting, you tend to make more mistakes. And that's when you get the negative plays. That's when you get the turnovers. I'm not saying you never take a shot, but if you're trying to take a shot when it's not there, or when you're starting to get anxious about that big play, that's when you stop having efficient offense.
And usually when you see a team struggling on first and second down, it's usually a sign that the run game is not doing a good job, right? Because you can't rely on the run to stay ahead of the chain. Stay ahead of the chains gets you 4 or 5 yard chunks at a time. And I think those two issues are kind of connected. But if you look at Florida, LSU ran the ball well against Florida. They averaged about 4.6 yards, sack adjusted, when they ran the ball. So one thing that I'll be looking at on Saturday is that will LSU be able to run the ball like it did against Florida? Because we saw LSU have a really good rushing game against Arkansas. So you saw that 1 step forward, but then they took 2 steps back against A&M and Alabama, and that's one of the reasons why their season fell apart. Can you build on what you did at Florida in the run game? And can you help Garrett Nussmeier? Can you take some of the pressure off him by giving him a good run game? And can you stay out of those third and long, third and 15 type of situations? Can you stay ahead of the chains and give yourself more manageable third downs? And maybe even, not even bring up third down. Maybe pick up the first down on either first or second.
I mean, the reason why they kept those drives so long was they kept on converting those 3rd and 9s. So it was like almost this mirage where they were stuck in 3rd and 9 a lot, but like they kept the drives alive and they kept the time possession up because they kept on converting them somehow.
But that's not sustainable. That's not sustainable.
No.
You can't rely on that to be, the main driver of your offense. So if Vanderbilt's defense, statistically, it hasn't been great. It hasn't been one of the best units in the SEC. But if LSU plays the way they did against Florida when they're allowing 7 sacks and they can't get anything on first and second down, then I don't care how good or bad the defense is you're playing, LSU's offense is still going to struggle. So.
Yeah, if you want to get your passing game going, this is a pretty good game to do it. Vanderbilt's 79th in the country in passing yards allowed. They only have 119 pressures all season, quarterback pressures all season. LSU is 185, just to put that in context. So they don't really get after the quarterback. The secondary isn't the most talented unit. We kind of saw that against Alabama. So they're well coached. Like I think, and their run defense is pretty good. They're 36th in the country in rushing defense right now. But they kind of have a talent deficiency when it comes to stopping the pass and stopping some of these explosive plays. So if you're going to get it going, now's the week to get it going.
Yeah, I think there's definitely possibilities there. On the other side of the ball, there's probably some possibilities for Vanderbilt too, and that's a lot of that is due to one guy, and that's going to be our star player. Today's star player segment is proudly sponsored by Waste Pro. Ensure your tailgate or event is a hit with the clean and convenient portable toilets from Waste Pro. Rent yours today. Diego Pavia, guys, we've mentioned this a couple times. LSU, they've had their struggles with mobile quarterbacks, haven't they? And Diego Pavia has had, I think, at least 50 yards rushing in every game but one this year. Is that whoever they played their FCS game, he left the game real early, and didn't have that much. But
he's had 80 yards in 4 games.
Yeah, and he scored a touchdown in 3 of the last 4 games on the ground. He's also, and he can throw. I mean, like, he's not going to wow you with his arm talent, but because you're worried about him running around back there, if there's an open receiver, he will pull the ball back and throw it, and he can be very effective. I mean, we've all seen the games against Alabama, against Texas where he kept them in the game, against Missouri, took them to overtime on the road. I mean, like, this guy creates magic out of some of these plays, and that's what LSU has to deal with.
Yeah, I just wrote an entire story about how Diego Pavia and this triple option offense could be a big problem for LSU specifically. And Pavia is second in the country, second in the SEC among quarterbacks and designed quarterback runs in terms of yardage. He leads the all SEC quarterbacks in rushing yards. That's a problem for this LSU team, especially in an offense that's going to be weird. They're going to have 3 running back sets and no tight ends. They're going to have 2 tight end sets, and they're going to use those tight ends in very unique ways in the run blocking scheme. They're going to run a triple option offense, so it's going to be kind of more like Army and Navy, but there's going to be a real passing attack attached to it because their tight end Eli Stowers, like that guy, that guy could play for pretty much any team in the SEC. He's really good. So you combine all that, and that could be like a real recipe for havoc for LSU's defense because. Again, these guys do a really, really good job of mixing things up, and I think Parashan talked about this yesterday when we got to talk to the players, and he said that they do a really good job of running the same play, but they do it at a different formations, different sets, different motions. So they do a very good job of disguising things, and their sequencing and their game planning is fantastic. So. I again, like it's just gonna be a big mental load for this LSU defense.
And Zach, they do a good job protecting Diego Pavia, whether that's in traditional pass protection or if it's with their run game. He hasn't been sacked very many times.
They stay ahead of the sticks.
Yeah, they stay ahead of sticks. They do a good job of pass protecting. And Brian Kelly has talked about, opposing offenses, they don't want to just drop back to pass and throw deep against LSU because they know LSU's pass rush can get home, right? That's what LSU's defense is best at, the pass rush. When they can really have a chance to get their edge rushers home, then the LSU defense can be good. Then it can have a good game and it can disrupt things offensively. But if they don't have chances to do that, if the opposing offense is running the ball really well, staying ahead of the chains and doing quick passes and not giving the LSU edge rushers a chance to get home, then I think that's when LSU has had their struggles, and that's when offenses have been able to be at their best against LSU. So that's one thing that I noticed. One thing that I want to spotlight here is that Vanderbilt does a good job of avoiding sacks, avoiding pressures, by not only keeping Diego Pavia clean when he does drop back, but also using their run game as a way to stay ahead of the chains and limit what the pass rush can do.
Just to wrap things up on Pavia's 20 total touchdowns, just 3 interceptions this year, and as you said, doesn't take a lot of sacks. So shout out to the kid from Albuquerque, my hometown. Although, again, sign of my age, the high school he went to didn't exist when I was in high school. So, It happens to the best of us.
I think we should note that he's not 100% healthy.
He did go down against South Carolina 2 weeks ago, I think it was.
I
They
believe
had a bye
so.
week, though.
But they had a bye week in between. But Clark Lee, their head coach, basically said that they put him on the shelf during the bye week and made him do nothing. And so that's just something to keep an eye out, like how healthy is he going to be heading into this game. And they have another mobile quarterback in Nate Johnson, so like their whole read option, triple option thing doesn't go away, but it's a very different problem to have in terms of like Pavia's been one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC this season. Nate Johnson is a guy who wasn't good enough to start at Utah when they needed a quarterback. Right. So it means a lot, if he's healthy or not.
And one thing before we move on, Zach, I just want to point out, like, is this like the third time's the charm for defending mobile quarterbacks with LSU? Like, how can LSU figure things out? How can they get better than what they did against A&M and Alabama? I'm curious what you think, Koki, because is it something about this defense just intrinsically that because they're playing more man coverage, they're more susceptible to quarterback runs? Or is it more of an issue where they're just not fitting the run well, and then they're not defending the opposing quarterback runs very well just because they're not doing their responsibilities? I think it's like, Alabama did such a good job of using shifts and motions to sort of manipulate the LSU defense, shade it to one side, and then open up a rushing lane the other way.
Yeah.
Is that because LSU was in man coverage so much, and can LSU play more zone coverage? Like, how can they sort of adjust things to make sure that the issues against Jalen Milroe don't crop up again?
I don't know if it's necessarily a man coverage or zone coverage thing. I think a lot of it's just like it's schematic. It's a schematic issue in the sense that they're getting so far. Sometimes they're getting so far upfield or being so aggressive because that's kind of what Blake Baker's been like drilling into them, to where all of a sudden there's only a safety that's left to take down this guy, and then the safety misses the tackle, and all of a sudden it's a touchdown. I think like the Milroe 72-yard run happened just because they blitzed on that play. Mm-hmm. That wasn't because anyone took a wrong angle, and I think it's that, and I also think it's some of it's on the players for just being not doing their jobs, right? Like being overly aggressive and trying to fill a hole that doesn't necessarily need to be filled or whatnot. So
they have been susceptible to getting their hand caught in the cookie jar. I mean, they think they see one thing, and they've got bad eyes, as coaches say, on a play, and by the way, this Vandy offense kind of feeds off of that. I mean, there's gonna be misdirection, and as you said, 3 running backs, and one's running over here and one's running, and if you have bad eyes on a play, they're going to catch you. Yep. But I think the other half to that, guys, and we'll just kind of wrap up our when Vandy has the ball segment with this, like, it's going to happen once or twice. We've seen Vandy's offense do it too many times. We've seen LSU's defense be caught by it too many times. It's going to happen. The key for me is when it does happen, don't let it turn into a Marcel Reed situation where there's frustration and you start to your impulse is to play even harder and be more aggressive. And, oh God, we got to fix this. They can't do that. Just stay home, stay in your assignments, and let a couple of frustrations go.
Yeah, and set the edge. I want to see LSU's edge rushers, Braden Swinson and Savion Jones, just sort of keep Diego Pavia in the pocket when he does drop back to pass to prevent him from scrambling. Don't crash into the pocket and give him a lane to bounce outside. Just sort of keep him contained, because he's a much better runner than he is a thrower. He's got a good arm. He can beat you through the air, but what you want to limit is his rushing ability, and that's what makes him the most dangerous. So if you can keep him in the pocket, if you can force him to throw and hit his receivers, and if he beats you that way, then you tip your hat. But just, sort of make sure that he can't escape things and really create havoc with his legs, because that's what he's best at, and that's what makes Vanderbilt really dangerous.
Yeah, he loves to escape the pocket and just sort of create havoc as a passer in those passing situations, So as you said, like keeping him in the pocket's gonna be very key in this game.
All right, that's our breakdown. We're gonna take a break. When we come back, we've got around the SEC, and then we're gonna go into keys to the game and our picks for LSU Vanderbilt. You're gonna want to stay tuned for that. Be back right after this.
Since 1988, Classic Industrial Services, Inc. has led the industry in specialty contracting. From thermal insulation to scaffolding, coatings, and beyond, we cover it all. Every minute matters in our commitment to quality and safety. We're here to serve with roofing, siding, heat trace, and refractory services. Visit classicindustrial.com for more information.
Welcome back to the LSU Sports Insider, previewing LSU Vandy on today's episode. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for us. Appreciate you all hanging out on this Thursday. Actually, by the way, recording this on a Wednesday. We're airing it on Thursday. So if something crazy happens Wednesday night, Thursday morning, that's why we haven't talked about it. Should have mentioned that up top. Okay, guys, we're going to go around the SEC. This segment is brought to you by Classic Industrial Services, because at Classic Industrial Services, every minute matters. There's no real standout game in the SEC this week for probably the first time all season. It feels like you've always had an Alabama LSU, a Georgia Tennessee, and Ole Miss Georgia, whatever it was. We always had something every week. Not this week, but as we all know in college football, sometimes those are the weeks that sneak up on you. And there's 3 college football playoff contenders out of the 6 SEC teams with 2 or fewer losses. So really your CFP contenders. 3 of them are on the road with not gimmies. I mean, they should win the game, but Texas A&M at Auburn, Ole Miss is at Florida, and I'm missing one. Alabama is at Oklahoma.
Yes.
So that's again, you should win those games, but those are the kind of games where if you're not ready, all of a sudden you look up and you're down 14-3, and then it's, oh crap, we're in for it today.
Yeah, and I think, I guess Ole Miss going to Florida can be kind of dangerous, particularly because Florida has DJ Lagway back, and he's going to be just a week healthier than he was against LSU, and so he can cause problems with his arm. He wasn't perfect against LSU, but LSU fans know exactly how he's so accurate throwing the ball deep. Ole Miss is going to have to prevent that. I think they'll probably win, but again, going to the swamp on the road, particularly when Florida is coming off that big win against LSU, I think it's going to be a tough place to play. So they have to prove themselves that they can handle it.
Yeah, that's the game that I can see something really strange and frisky happening, even if I'm very, very high on Ole Miss at the moment. But yeah, as you said, that game to me is easily the one where I could see real chaos happening. I have trouble believing in Auburn and Oklahoma and couple in Kentucky.
I'm going to disagree with you. I think Auburn takes down Texas A&M.
Really?
I think that's the latest point of chaos in this SEC season.
See, I think Auburn, if it were the Iron Bowl, then I think maybe Auburn can pull off an upset, just because Iron Bowls are always so weird.
Iron Bowls at Auburn are weird. Iron Bowls in Tuscaloosa are usually a blowout, though, right? Yeah.
But Auburn has lost so many close games. It just feels like they're due one. And I think it's going to be a close game at the end.
It could be a close game. That wouldn't shock me. And a lot of it's going to come down to how good is Marcel Reed really.
You've also got, by the way, the look-ahead spot of all look-ahead spots for Texas A&M, which is getting ready to play Texas.
And did you see the clip of Mike Elko? He had the 40 and slip. Someone asked him about how do you stay focused when Texas is looming, and he said essentially we're not focused. We're only focused on the task at hand. Our sole focus is on Texas. I mean Auburn.
So it is, Coach.
Yeah, so you had the 40 and slip there.
You don't say. Yeah, and maybe that's just he just got cut. We all get words in our head when we mean to say the words. That happens. But it is kind of a look ahead spot, and Auburn is not as bad as their record shows. So I would be careful. And imagine the ultimate chaos scenario here is Auburn wins that game, and then A&M turns around and beats Texas. And now you've got A&M with 3 losses. But Texas, their resume is shaky. If they lose to A&M and they don't make it to the SEC championship game, that is a shaky resume. I know they've been ranked real high all year long, and they've looked pretty good. They're 1 loss away from biting their fingernails on December the 2nd, or December the 8th, it is.
They would be biting their fingernails because they probably wouldn't be in the SEC championship game in that scenario, right? Well, actually, I don't know.
I don't know how the tiebreakers would fall out there, but they would be behind Georgia in a tiebreaker, and I assume they would be behind Alabama as well. So I think if Texas loses, you're getting Georgia, Alabama.
Okay. So
Assuming those teams, well, Georgia's done with SEC games. Alabama would have to take care of
Yeah,
it.
but would Tennessee have the tiebreaker over Alabama?
It's a good question.
That's what I mean. Like, I don't really know.
I don't like.
Where does Ole Miss figure in this too? If they win the next 2 games, this has always been one of those
things where I said, okay, Thanksgiving week, I'm going to go look up the tiebreakers and find out exactly what I need to know. But before that, we'll just let the chips fall.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of feel about the playoff rankings as well. I know people like to get worked up right now. I won't get worked up maybe until next rankings. I mean, I think people are starting to sort of have the conversations about how do you weigh the Big Ten teams who've played a soft schedule versus the SEC teams who've picked up a couple losses against a really tough schedule. The playoff has changed, it's expanded, but these conversations that people are having, it's all the same conversations that we've always had before. It's the most deserving team, or is it the best team? I think wherever you fall on that, it won't be decided until the next few weeks. So, just see how the committee weights things, whether you think they've got too many Big Ten teams in the top 7 or so, not enough SEC teams up there. It'll all get sorted out, but I think, the conversations, those conversations are going to keep happening in the next few weeks.
I don't think anyone can or should get mad until we see what happens in Indiana, Ohio State this week. Yeah. And we see what happens in Texas A&M next week.
Indiana, Ohio State, what you're going to get, whoever loses that game, whether it's Ohio State's second loss or Indiana, who's looked so good this year but really has not played anybody. I don't think they have a single top 25 team on their schedule.
They've played one team that's 500.
Washington or Michigan
in Big Ten play. Everyone else is under 500 in Big
Nebraska.
Ten play.
Yeah, they played Nebraska. They played Nebraska. They've been impressive, but they
haven't played anybody.
They haven't played anybody. So what you're going to get is whoever loses that game, that's who the 4th and 5th and 6th SEC teams are going to be like, look, our 10-2 is better than their 11-1, or they're or better than their 10-2 because look at all these tough teams we played. That's the conversation that's going to be taking place championship week.
Yeah, but if you're these SEC teams, though, you're still rooting for Ohio State to win that game because, like, if Indiana wins, Ohio State has the Penn State win, and they have the reputation of just being Ohio State. Yep. So now you're talking. Now the chances of the Big Ten getting 4 teams is much higher if Indiana keeps on winning than if Indiana loses this game, and then you can really start picking up the resume. And they don't have the conference championship game to prove it. Really.
And we see these Indiana's ranked number 5. It's like, could they lose to Ohio State and you're going to drop out of the top 12 from number 5? But we've seen wild swings in these rankings from time to time.
Why? Like, what's the case for keeping them in? What impressive wins do they have?
The case right now is that they've beaten everybody badly.
Yeah, right now with the goose egg in the loss column, you can justify keeping them that high. But once they start picking up a loss, how can you justify keeping them up there?
I could argue that you can't justify them putting them that high as someone who voted them 9th in my AP poll, but. Yeah, that's just me.
It's interesting. I mean, they're probably also benefiting from a landscape in which there's not a lot of undefeated teams, and there's frankly not a lot of one-loss teams left anymore. And so you kind of, I see that shiny 0 over there. I'm going to bump them up. But we'll see when it's not a 0 anymore. So today's episode of the LSU Sports Insider is brought to you by Classic Industrial Services, proudly serving Louisiana and the entire United States with high-quality scaffolding, erection, and rental services, metal siding and roofing, thermal insulation services, and much more. From large capital projects to commercial projects or your smaller quick response needs, Classic Industrial is your go-to for quality and safety. They're not just about business, they're a proud community partner, supporting local initiatives and helping build a stronger Baton Rouge. Because at Classic Industrial Services, every minute matters. Going to our sports betting segment, brought to you by the Queen of Baton Rouge. Experience the thrill of game day at 1717 Kitchen and Cocktails, your premier destination for elevated sports entertainment. You guys were a little surprised. Betting line this week is LSU by 7.5. I think the comment was LSU shouldn't be favored by a touchdown against anybody.
Yeah, that was me who said that. I mean, I
couldn't remember which one.
That was me.
Text,
I said I was a little surprised it was that high, given the way LSU's played the last month of the season. I don't think they have any business being a touchdown favorite over a Vanderbilt team that they have the same exact record, Zach. I know the resume is, if you think about it, just the brand names.
One has a win over Ole Miss, one has a win over Alabama. I mean, the resumes are actually pretty similar.
That's the point I was going to bring up. Ole Miss. Vanderbilt's worst loss is worse than LSU's worst loss. I don't know if that made sense.
Georgia State loss.
They lost to Georgia State.
Georgia State's a 2-win G5 team, just for context.
Still never makes sense.
But Vanderbilt's best win is better than LSU's best win. Vanderbilt beat Alabama.
Is
LSU
it?
beat Ole Miss.
I think Ole Miss is better than Alabama.
Okay. You
But
can
that's
make
just me.
a case.
That's just
I
me.
think it's close. Yeah.
Yeah, it's close. My point is that these two teams have very similar resumes. One of them is coming off one of them is on a 3-game losing streak. The other one lost to South Carolina the last time. But I think, these two teams, they're very similar, right? So they should be closer than a touchdown favorite.
Yeah, I do wonder if the Diego Pavia injury or not being 100% plays into that. But
I think they also look at, they only beat Auburn 17-7 and Kentucky by
South
2
Carolina really
scores,
handled them.
And South Carolina really handled them. And so people are thinking, all right, yeah, they can stay close with these big time schools that kind of sleepwalk through these games, but can they actually play well against a team that is more talented than them? Because LSU is the more talented team. I think it's still fair to say that, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
for sure.
I think that's kind of their reasoning. But I said this after you said your piece about why is the line at 7.5. I wouldn't touch this game with a 10-foot pole if I was a bettor. And if you're betting on this game, I don't want to say you have a betting problem, but that's
No, you bet where you have an edge. All right, you bet where you have an edge.
You don't really have an edge in either way on that line. I think
As our Datitude podcast host would say, Jim Derry would say, I wouldn't bet this game with your money. But some of you may feel differently. The over-under is 53.5. The money line, Vandy's plus 240, so you can get about 2.5 times your money back if you like the upset. Tiger fans, you can catch all the sports action at the Queen Casino's DraftKings Sportsbook Bar and 1717 Kitchen and Cocktails. With top-notch screens and live betting, it's the ultimate spot to watch your favorite teams and enjoy a cold brew or signature cocktail. The Queen Casino is the only land-based casino in Baton Rouge and your go-to for game day or any day. Visit today and elevate your sports watching experience. Okay, time to pick this thing. Before we do, we're going to do our keys to the game. That's brought to you by Associated Grocers. Join our team and support the success of local independent retail grocers. Apply today for available positions at Associated Grocers. We've talked a lot about them. If you got to narrow it down to one, Koki, what's your key to LSU versus Vanderbilt?
Force 3rd and long if you're the defense. This Vanderbilt offense preys on getting into 3rd and shorts or no 3rd downs at all and staying ahead of the sticks, and they run the ball well. And if you're forcing them into 3rd and long and forcing kind of Pavia to be a traditional drop back passer, that's where they kind of struggle, and that's kind of where the magic sort of stops for them. So Vanderbilt wins this game when they stay ahead of the sticks and they keep the football. They beat Alabama because of time possession. And keeping the ball away from LSU's more talented offense when it comes to facing Vanderbilt's defense is kind of going to be the key to the game for them. And that's how they beat Bama. It's how they've gotten the 6 wins so far. And I think that's going to be the key for them heading into this game.
Reed?
Yeah, I think, defending the quarterback run, defending the run in general, we've talked about it ad nauseum. That's one of the top keys. But I'll also go with preventing sacks, keeping Garrett Nussmeier clean. I think there's kind of a misconception that sacks are all on the offensive line. It's only the offensive line's responsibility to prevent sacks. It's really more of a collective effort between the O-line, the running backs and pass protection, and the quarterback for making the right reads and getting the ball out on time, not holding onto the ball too long. So LSU, a lot was made of their struggles in pass protection last week against Florida, 7 sacks. When they had 6 all year going in. A lot was made of Paul Mabenga and the pressures he allowed in his second career start at left guard. So I think, if LSU needs to stay ahead of the chains and avoid the 3rd downs, like we mentioned, one way to do that, they have to keep Garrett Nussmeier clean. They have to keep him upright, because without that, then they're going to find themselves in 2nd and 15s and 3rd and 11s, those kinds of down and distances that you want to avoid. So I want to see if LSU can get back to the pass protecting unit they've been most of the season and give Garrett Nussmeier a chance to complete some of his throws.
This is more of a nebulous thing. My key to the game is just play hard, come out motivated. I mean, don't act like the season's over, because as we mentioned at the top, it's not. You can say this game doesn't mean anything, and from a national championship perspective, that is true. But college football games played in November for more than a century have been played without any bearing on the national championship game. It's still a big game. There is still a difference between 8-4, 7-5, 6-6. Come out and act like it. So that's my key. Tiger fans, Associated Grocers is hiring. Join a team committed to the success of independent retail grocers. Apply today at Associated Grocers and be part of something great. All right, prediction time on the LSU Sports Insider Podcast. LSU Vandy is at 6:45 p.m. Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. It's on the SEC Network. Koki Riley, what you got for us?
Vanderbilt 28, LSU 24.
Spicy. Oof.
Upset time. Upsets. Explain
Koki,
yourself.
Koki, you just picked Vanderbilt to win in Tiger Stadium.
I know. It's a big risk, but just given the matchup, I have trouble finding a reason why LSU's offense is going to get it together enough to make up for the fact that its defense is inherently facing the sort of offense that can give them the exact sort of offense that can give them problems. Because, like, again, it's not like they only have to concentrate on the run game, too. Like, I think we didn't talk quite enough about how good Eli Stowers is at tight end and, like, how that guy can pretty much play for any team in the SEC. He's a really good player. And so they have a weapon that you have to keep in mind in their passing attack, too. So it's like this triple-pronged threat outside of just, like, the triple option itself. Right. So it's just a big issue for this defense, matchup wise. And then on the flip side, like, you need this LSU offense to be productive and productive at throwing the ball downfield. And we just haven't seen that for a few weeks. And I just have to see it before I believe it.
All right, Reed, you just got on Koki for picking Vandy to win in Tiger Stadium. There's no way you would do the same thing. What is your pick?
I gave Koki grief, but I think I have to agree with Koki here. I think I went, what did I say, 30-27 Vanderbilt? Yeah. God, I keep dropping my phone.
Is that 3 in a row you dropped the phone?
That's 3 podcasts in a row. I've fumbled the phone.
Who will break their skid first, LSU football or Reed Darcey?
Who fumbles the ball? Who fumbles the ball away more? LSU,
it just
Garrett
slides.
Nussmeier or Reed Darcey?
It just slides off the chair. I don't know what.
You gotta hold it with 2 hands in the pocket, right?
I'm going at Garrett Nussmeier for his ball security. I need to be more fundamentally sound with mine. I'll get that later. Anyway, so I think Vanderbilt, like you said, it's just a bad matchup, right? I mean, I think about the LSU defense and the ability to stop the run and stop the quarterback run. I just think these teams that have mobile quarterbacks are a bad matchup for the LSU defense, given the way they want to play and given what's the best way for them to play, and that's aggressive approach with the pass rush and playing man coverage on the back end. I think that just makes them vulnerable to running quarterbacks, and I don't see an easy fix. I don't think you can sort of wave a magic wand and just get rid of those problems in a week or so to get ready for this game. I think they're a little more, deep rooted than that. So I think LSU's defense is going to struggle a little bit similar to what we saw against Alabama, maybe not quite to the same extent. But yeah, it takes a lot for me to pick Vanderbilt to win a home night game against LSU in Tiger Stadium. But I think if you just put on a blindfold and ignore the helmet logos and the resumes and the history, I think these two teams are pretty similar, and Vanderbilt's just a bad matchup for LSU.
All right, I can't do it, fellas. I gotta go with LSU. I picked 27-17. I'm trying to think why I picked such a low-scoring game. Like, I might add a touchdown and make it 34-24 there. But I think one thing we haven't totally discussed, and LSU's offensive line has had its issues, its defensive line has had its issues, but that is an area where they should have an advantage over Vanderbilt. And if you can dominate on the line of scrimmage, as we talked about with Florida last week, where that was a possible problem spot for LSU, I think it's a possible problem spot for Vanderbilt this week. And I think if you can really disrupt the game at the line of scrimmage, a lot of that other stuff matters a whole lot less. It makes your offense a lot easier. It makes their offense a whole lot tougher. And again, Diego Pavia is maybe not 100%. He's the kind of player who's really going to be affected by, even being 80%. Diego Pavia is not the same because the way he plays, he's walking a tightrope out there. And if he's not able to do that, things could get ugly for Vandy. All right, so that's going to do it for our show today. LSU Vandy, Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. We'll be back next week with more podcasts. Maybe getting to talk about a win for the first time in a month and the season finale against Oklahoma coming up. So for our producer, Alex Lee, Koki Riley, and Reed Darcey are here, and I'm Zach Ewing, and this has been the LSU Sports Insider Podcast.